Welcome to Someone Talks, the official podcast of the National D-Day Memorial, where leading experts spill all the secrets of the Second World War. With your host, Dr. John C. McManus.
Greetings. Welcome to Someone Talk. I'm your host, Dr. John C. McManus from Missouri S&T. Alongside, as always, are my dear friends and partners in crime from the National D-Day Memorial Foundation, April Cheek Messier and John Long. How are you, good folks?
Wonderful. Excited about today's talk.
Doing well. Just an exciting time of year for us.
A busy time.
Very busy. But exciting.
Turns to summer. There's a lot going on at the memorial every year. I don't have to tell you guys.
25th anniversary
of the memorial.
That's right. Memorial.
Not of D-Day. We can count. We do know.
Or of D-Day, that'd be a very different animal, wouldn't it?
That's right.
We'd have a lot of veterans, and it'd be wonderful.
That's true.
Well, of course, alongside, as always, is Angela Lynch as well. And Angela, of course, this is a busy time of year for you, too.
Oh, yes.
Tell us what you're up to.
What are we not up to?
I know.
Exactly.
But we are taking some time to record some podcast episodes, and that's always exciting, especially this time of year, because we do have so much going on, and it's a good way to kind of let our listeners, and in this case, this will have a video element to it, so our viewers know what we're up to and our offerings and the different things that we have going on to not only commemorate the D-Day anniversary this year, but also the memorial's 25th anniversary, which we're very excited about. A few years ago, so 2 years ago, for the 80th anniversary of D-Day, some of you that are listening probably were with us and saw this, the great projection film that we showed on the memorial, right there on the arch as the backdrop, as the movie screen, if you will, when we went in, the D-Day experience in light and sound. And it was so immensely popular, after that first run, we showed it for 2 nights there at the memorial. And immediately the questions are, you're going to do this every year, aren't you? Like you're going to do this next weekend. No, because it's quite the undertaking. But the plan was to always bring it back because it was so immensely popular. But it is a massive, massive undertaking. And so to kind of commemorate and celebrate the 25th anniversary, also America's 250th anniversary, we thought this is a great time to bring it back and to also introduce a prelude that will include basically honoring America's 250th. So kind of weaving that patriotic story into our D-Day story and expanding the program. So those who saw it the first time, it's new, it's fresh. They're going to love it again because they're asking to see it again, but it will be a new iteration. And I want to kick it over to April to kind of talk about, before we introduce our guest, but to kind of talk about the original idea for this and a little bit about that process and where that came from.
Sure. Well, it's funny because the staff here knows that a lot of times I'll go around and I'll say, oh, I have this idea. And then everybody scatters, because they're afraid of what I'm going to
They run to the hills.
I'm off that day.
I've had to change the wording and say something different now. But I was in Normandy, and one of the things that a number of the cathedrals do, but I was in Bayeux, and they had projected this, basically this story, all very history based of the Normandy region, onto the cathedral itself. So it was just remarkable, and it was so well done. And I kind of just saw that and just thought, oh, how cool would that be to tell the story of D-Day at the memorial? Because one thing that we're always looking at is with our larger commemorations is how can we tell the story, but maybe in a different way, more, we've got a younger generation. How do we continue to engage them and get them excited about the history and the stories? And so I just thought that would be a lot of fun. So I mentioned that to the staff,
and we're all sitting here thinking that. And I had seen this on another cathedral when I visited Normandy years before, and I'm sitting here thinking, yes, this is great, but our site is so different because it's not your standard just flat facade, and
it's an arch.
It's an arch. It's got a hole in the middle. What are we projecting on, guys? Different layers, very complex, but also who around here does this? We're in rural Virginia. Like, I don't think there are too many outfits that are specializing in projection mapping. And we just happen to be on a meeting with our ad agency, Elevation, out of Richmond. And, they're asking us about our plans for the 80th so they can get a feel of how they're marketing and approaching it for us. And we mentioned this idea just kind of, casually. And Donna Thompson, who was our project manager at the time, says, wait, I know the guys to do this. We're like, what? How? And then she introduces us to our friends at Virginia Tech's Institute for Creativity, Art, and Technology. And they are joining us here today, David Franisich and Taylor Upthegrove. Thanks for joining Someone Talked.
It was just meant to be.
Here you are.
We're so excited to have you too. And I really, just so people understand what you all do, because you really have this transdisciplinary approach in working with different faculty and students and everything. Talk a little bit about what your program, what you do at Virginia Tech, so people understand that.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. Virginia Tech's invested in our institute, and we sit outside of the colleges, but we work with everybody. So if you're a student or faculty in any department, we want to talk to you about how you can do your research or further your education in this sort of neat space where creativity and arts and technology come together. Who would have thought? We're looking at science, engineering, arts, and design kind of holistically and saying, you know what? After you finish Virginia Tech and you go out into the world, you're going to be using all these things in your life. You don't just do computer science, or you don't just do art. And that's how the world works. We all do all kinds of different things to achieve our goals. And that's what our institute supports. We're happy that we get to work on projects like this with students. We engage with students on this project and others. So we're really trying to elevate their experiences and also the global distinction of Virginia Tech. Anything you'd like to add to that, David?
Recently, we've been doing more of these sort of external partnerships. We call them internally because they're not internal to Virginia Tech. So our main mission is to fund interdisciplinary arts integrated research at the university. But we've been connecting more and more with organizations like the National D-Day Memorial Foundation to do things like this because we have certain expertise that, like Angela said, don't exist in rural Virginia. Really, like we're kind of a concentration of these skill sets and expertise. So it's been really fun and got a lot of joy out of sort of bringing this expertise out into the world of Southwest Virginia and Virginia in general, to be able to work on really interesting things that aren't necessarily academic research.
No, absolutely. And I mean, you guys, just give us a few examples, because we're going to talk about what we do at the Memorial. But I mean, I know I saw the really neat project you did with Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. You did something recently, I think, with Nikki Giovanni's poetry. Just kind of put a picture in people's minds of what some of that looks like.
Yeah, David and I in particular are highly interested in immersive experiences. I think there's a focus on art in particular because it can really touch someone and tell a story and create broad impacts that go far beyond the immediate experience. And When We Went In is definitely a great example of that. Some other examples, the Edgar Allan Poe work we've done does use immersive multimedia. So we're looking at spatial sound, multiple projectors, immersive projection, immersive technologies, sometimes with augmented and virtual realities. And these create novel ways to tell stories, novel ways to experience stories that we can bring out to places beyond Virginia Tech, because Blacksburg, Virginia is fairly remote. There's 45,000 people with the students there. And so we're excited to have the chance to share the work that comes out of Blacksburg with partners like the Torpedo Factory in Alexandria, Virginia, where we can take these artworks and install them where thousands of people can come and experience them, not just in Blacksburg. Any particular pieces that excite you, David?
Another external partnership that sort of excites me is we helped create an immersive experience for the Taubman Museum of Art in Roanoke as part of a traveling exhibition of European paintings that they had a couple years ago, and actually are currently working on another immersive experience for them as part of their 75th anniversary celebrations this year. And that's going to be opening in August, and it'll be focused on their permanent collection and hopefully something that will live a little bit longer with the museum, and that maybe they could send out and travel as an exhibition of their permanent collection to other art museums around the country.
It's really amazing work. The title of it is called "When We Went In: The D-Day Experience in Light and Sound." And of course, I want to encourage everybody, if you can, get to the memorial this year to see it. As we've seen in past years, obviously the demand is very high, but you can also see it on YouTube as well. Just search it and you'll get a sense of it there. It's just absolutely, guys, it's amazing work to convey this remarkable event. So what goes through my mind, I wonder about, like, here you get the first communication from April and the folks at the D-Day Memorial, and with this idea. So how do you, as visual artists, how do you approach this project? What was it like to get on site at the memorial and begin figuring this out? What were the first steps?
I guess I would preface that by saying David in particular, and Ethan Candelario and Carter Roberts, who's a composer, they've been working on projects like this and at this scale for a few years, and they have some great experience starting this kind of project and then figuring out how to best approach it. And I'll hand the baton to David to describe that.
Yeah, so we have done. I worked with these folks with a few projects on campus. We've done a few large scale projection mapping projects on campus for different sort of things, mostly surrounding the sesquicentennial of the university. And so those were a lot of fun. And so we had this sort of workflow and process built in and understanding of how these sorts of things need to go. Now, granted, the D-Day Memorial is a unique location, a unique architecture, and a unique story. And we knew we needed to approach it, with a very careful and sort of reverent process to be very respectful of the history of both the site and the stories that we were trying to tell. So when Tanner brought this to me and said, "Hey, we can do this thing," of course I was very excited because it's, I wanted oh heck yeah, let's do that. Let's find a way to make it work, right? Like, are they scared of how much is it going to cost? Because this is something that's not cheap. To do.
We were scared.
Yeah.
Yes.
But worth every.
That's right.
So that's the first hurdle, right? And of course, we can do things. We have resources. We can do things a little bit cheaper. It's not that we're underbidding other folks. It's that part of the land grant mission of the university is to be able to connect with local organizations and be able to help them do things. So as far as telling the story goes. Let me start over. There's two parts of this, right? There's the telling the story, and then there's the technical end of the thing, which is getting the pixels where people can see them onto the memorial and another thing. So those are the two separate challenges, and they come together, of course. As in the telling the story part, after talking, we did some brainstorming sessions with the lovely folks in this room, plus Tara, who's not here. We can't forget hers. And really came on this idea is like, we needed to be able to inspire the younger generations. And the way we were going to do that was to tell the story of D-Day through the words of the people who were there. Because the people who were there were so young, we tend to forget that most of the soldiers, today too, but in World War II especially, we're very, very young. We're looking at 18 to 22-year-olds, like the high percentage of them were there. And this is, on D-Day as well. So to inspire younger generations, tell these stories through the voices of these young people that experience this, and tell it in a way that's engaging and interesting. So we started there to create the narrative, and we had to do a lot of research to find words and texts and oral histories, and we were able to craft a narrative from that. Feel free to stop me at any time, because if we want to talk about specific parts of this, I could go totally into the process of this. I don't want to go too deep.
Let's get a little bit into the oral histories, and we'll bring John Long into this because he worked very closely with you all, identifying oral histories that we had as part of our archives, but also outside sources. So if you all want to kind of delve into the research and how we went about choosing the accounts that would be told.
Well, let me say, first of all, that I was very excited about that because having the actual participants tell this story, is much better than, we could have had a John McManus hologram lecturing. And,
Nobody wants that. I mean, honestly,
I would have been fascinated, but McManus was not there on those beaches or on a ship or flying over, and to have these people that actually in first person say, here's what I experienced, and not just D-Day, by the way, because you went back to England and the experience there, and then wrapped up all the way through the whole story. But it was to me one of the greatest aspects of this, that it wasn't just a history lecture; it was meet these people, get to know them, and do it in such a really cool technological way.
And sort of in the researching and in the materials that you all gave to us to get us started on the words was Peter Thomas's poem, which is the title of the piece, When We Went In, right? That when we saw that, we were wondering how we could use it at first, because we were just looking for words to intersperse with visuals to tell the story. But as we sort of sat with it and started brainstorming about the words, it was mentioned at some point in one of our internal teams about, could we use this poem as the narrative through line, as the connecting piece for the whole thing? And we started cutting it up and seeing, okay, in order to tell the story of D-Day, how could we do that with this poem? And it ended up working great in really creating this sort of these pauses between the vignettes of the D-Day story that we really wanted to tell, which I think was split up into 7 different sections, being like preparation, landing, et cetera, et cetera. And then we really wanted to find accounts that showed the breadth and depth of the different people that were involved. So really trying to show as many different experiences of D-Day as possible. Because, like when you see Saving Private Ryan, you see the experience of the paratrooper and the experience of the infantry soldiers, right? But it was so much bigger than that. And so that's really what we wanted to do when we were looking for these accounts. The logistics people in England, the nurses, the pilots, the Navy crewmen who were on the boats, getting this really broad perspective on how D-Day happened, I think ended up really just telling this beautiful picture of the whole thing.
Well,
April, tell us who Peter Thomas was, because a lot of people may not recognize the name, but I guarantee you've heard his voice.
Absolutely. So Peter, and I have to say that was one of my favorite parts, because I knew Peter Thomas very well. He'd been to the memorial on a number of occasions, lived in Florida, but was an early supporter of the memorial, a D-Day veteran who was with the 1st Infantry Division, and had landed on D-Day and seen what had happened to some of the first waves as they came in, and it stayed with him. And so years later, he wrote this amazing poem, and he'd even come to the memorial on occasion, and we actually had a whole symphonic orchestra one time behind him while he read that poem. And it just has always stayed with me, because he was an incredible man. People will recognize his voice. He had a very recognizable voice, because he actually was the voice of Forensic Files. He did that for many, many years, I think 1996 to about 2011. He died in 2016 at the age of 91. But he was the voice and received many awards in his lifetime.
Many commercials
that he did.
Jello.
That's right. I think he did the Jello. I mean, he had a very recognizable voice. That was probably one of the things that we really wanted his voice in there, but we weren't quite sure how to do it. I mean, you guys did an incredible job with that. You might want to mention that too, by the way,
that's a
what you
great
did.
That's-
Yeah.
That's a whole separate aspect
Yes.
of the technical part of this, which is that, we wanted to use people's own words, which meant voices. We honestly didn't have the budget or the time to find and hire, I think 38 to 40 or whatever different people. And not to mention Peter Thomas's voice for the poem. So we ended up employing some generative AI tools to generate voices for this. And so with Peter Thomas's voice specifically, we actually got permission from the family to clone his voice from recordings that we had. And then I have some voiceover experience. I did a reading of his poem based on the reading of his that we had from the memorial, basically tried to mimic his delivery of it. Then voice changed my voice to his voice. And so
because the recording, he was an older.
Yeah, he was an
Yeah,
older
not
gentleman,
D-Day.
and also the audio quality wasn't great. There was symphonic music being played behind it and all these things. So it was not a recording that we could have used for this kind of production, unfortunately. Although his reading of it was great. So basically tried to re-deliver it and then use a younger version of Peter Thomas's voice to deliver the poem for our production.
When we went in, the beach had been taken. The living fought on. The dead forsaken.
Actually, I was so surprised at how well it turned out. This was our first time really trying to employ these kinds of tools, and it worked really well. And we were so glad that the family was happy.
If Peter Thomas's family is listening, just thank you again, because
really.
It really
absolutely.
could not have been as nice as it was had it
Absolutely.
not been for that. It's incredible.
And
So
his
grateful. for him.
grandson, I think specifically, went to bat
Yeah.
for us, right? Because he understood understood how the tools worked.
Do this.
And that
Yeah,
we really
because it's all new, right? Everyone hears AI, but what is that? It's a little bit scary. Is this weird? And he really embraced it and said, "This is a great thing they're doing."
Yeah. And that we weren't trying to do anything else with Peter Thomas's voice other than we want to deliver his words in his younger voice.
Okay.
And that's it. So to be very respectful and reverent of that.
Yeah.
And this seems like the perfect kind of use for that sort of tool. Really, it's almost just go back in time.
And what makes it so special is that really then it's him kind of telling the story through this poem in these stages that sets up the others who are telling the story of what they were seeing and witnessing.
Mhm.
And it's really just, it's them speaking to us, in a way that we don't have that luxury now because they're not with us, but so many of them, we will have some with us this year, but it's just it's wonderful to hear the voices and just the way that you all crafted it to have the narrative of D-Day in 20 something minutes too, which was incredible because that was the challenge of engaging an audience, and it can't be too long, but you definitely want to, how do you tell this entire story of D-Day in 20 something minutes? And you guys achieved that beautifully, I think. So,
And I remember you were so exacting that we were trying to research where was this particular soldier or sailor
Right.
from?
yeah.
Mhm.
What kind of accent would he
Yeah.
probably
Right,
have?
right.
Right.
Look, he was from Chicago.
Mhm.
So let's find a voice for him
Mhm.
with a Chicago accent.
Yeah.
That kind of respect, I think that respect and reverence was intentional throughout the entire process for us, and trying to be as accurate to lift up their stories. We're just here to help tell what they said and show what they said in a new way. But I really think we strived for everything to be accurate where possible, and not put our own fingerprint on things.
My ears were ringing. I noticed I was bleeding, so I rubbed my head. It was blood, but it wasn't mine.
It seemed like the earth was crumbling beneath us. I kept thinking, is this the end of me? Will I ever see my family again? God, give me strength to go on and see this day through.
Somehow I made it to the seawall, where we blew up the barbed wire with Bangalore torpedoes. We then proceeded up the bill, where my company commander, Captain Williams, was hit right in front of me by a grenade. We were steadily losing men, and we really didn't have any organization. Everybody was just going forward, with every man for himself.
After what seemed like several hours, our unit had cleared a path through the minefields and reached the top of the bluffs above the beach area. In looking back, unless you were there, you could not imagine the destruction of boats, vehicles, equipment, and the bodies of the dead and wounded.
Well, and I know you all collected close to 100 different accounts, firsthand accounts. So tell me about that because that's got to be daunting. You're in libraries, you're working with us in our archives, and having to find lots of things outside of what we have. Mm-hmm. But how do you determine out of the 100, it gets pared down to 38, which is still so many. But that's one of the challenges we always have, is how do you tell a complete story in the time that you have? So take us through that process, because I can't imagine what that looked like.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the approach was to start with a maximalist and have as many stories as possible, then really start thinking about how things fit together, especially with the poem as the through line and the anchor. And as we see these sort of vignettes emerge, thematically thinking about who, temporally, who needs to be where, starting to sort out in time where things happen chronologically that are accurate and make sense. But also, what are they saying and what's the emotional impact at that time? That gave us a little way to drive what was in and what was not in. If it felt like something was high impact emotionally, it's a lot easier to include that in the narrative. I think that every account that you hear does deliver a perspective that's emotional and unique, and I don't know, it's very difficult to winnow that down. I think also earlier David was mentioning the breadth of perspectives. Trying to have as much representation as possible was important, and there's just no way we can get everything in there. Even the research we did is, there's just so much more out there. Any comments on that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, and there are even more than 100, of course, that we read. Like, those were the ones that we snipped out to be possible ones,
viable,
right? Like, just reading books and diving through articles and oral history sites. And I mean, it's funny how much you just become like a researcher, even though that's not our backgrounds, but, being able to make sure that you get to original sources and verifying accounts and things like that, because sometimes you'll find something on a webpage and be like, I don't know if that's correct or not. But as far as narrowing them down, you start to get a sense of how the words will play with the visuals for the story that we're trying to tell. And I have quite a bit of experience editing down interviews for media, and you start to get a sense of the sound bite and what's going to work well with the visuals that you have or that you have planned. And so we had a pretty good idea of the visual arc that we wanted to tell. So really considering each of the accounts and how they would play with the visuals and what could be shown while those words were being spoken, and then also then how the stories connected to each other, because sometimes you'd have a really great these words are so great, but they just feel like an island in this narrative, and so then we just had to cut it. You just this isn't going to work. I can't think of an example specifically, but I do remember that happened a couple times. And we're just like, I particularly was like in love with a couple of these quotes, but then Ethan was like, that's not going to work. We got to make this more concise. It's just, cut it down. He's always very good at being realistic.
The B-roll matters.
I know.
It can be hard to let that go. I know.
Dr. J, you don't have any experience with that with your books?
Oh no, not at all. As one of my colleagues quite bluntly puts it, he's talking about having to edit out stuff out of your books. He says you have to decide which of your babies you're going to kill.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's the phrase he uses, and I'm far from wrong. So I know where you're coming from, David. I mean, it's so the visuals interest me though. So where were you coming up with this? How did you? I know you had that visual arc you had in mind. Where were you physically accessing a lot of the footage, and also the problem is, we have the same footage over and over we see in documentaries. How did you make it fresh? How did you string it together?
Wow.
That's
I guess first I would like to thank Ethan Candelario for. Candelario.
Yeah,
sorry.
No, I know. I said his name wrong for years too before he corrected me. It's the same kind of thing where it's like I won't correct.
Yeah.
You won't correct somebody, then you hear him say it. You're like, wait, why didn't you correct me?
Such a deep dive looking through archives, and if you don't know what Ethan is really doing on this project, he's a motion graphics designer and an incredible artist. So he's taking a lot of these are images that are still images. They're not motion images. And he's taking them apart in ways with computers to animate them, to make them move, to make them look realistic. And so untold hours by Ethan trying to find sources, primary sources in particular, and then saying, what can I do with this? Can I use this and make it into part of the narrative? And when you see the work, it's incredible because it's not like a linear film with actors exactly. And this style really helped us to tell the story in a non-linear sort of way. It is linear, but you're not watching a movie. And really kudos to Ethan and David for taking these still images, and there's motion images, and bringing them to life. I mean, it's so alive and there's so much detail because Ethan sourced images and David and myself. I mean, I had some Roanoke Times clippings of my grandfather-in-law who was a pilot, and anything we could find, we're taking and evaluating and assessing. I don't know. Ethan had thousands, millions. I don't know. Of
I don't
files.
know. I think it was definitely tens of thousands of files, because it's one of those things where you take a maximalist approach to everything, where you're just, oh, that looks like it could work, and you grab it. Especially when you're doing broad research, sometimes you're looking for a specific image to work, where you're like, oh, we need images of like paratroopers jumping out of a plane here, or something like that. And so it was really a combination. To your question, Dr. J, about where we're finding this stuff. It was all over the place. We found things in books. We found things on museum archives. A lot of things came from the Imperial War Museum, which is from the UK. They have a really great archive of digital media from World War II and D-Day in particular. Library of Congress, National Archives, archive.org for finding old like newsreel footage. So many different places. And we really wanted to have a mix of iconic imagery. So we wanted people to feel anchored in the visuals that they know, but it really does come from all over, and it really depended on what we were looking for. And Ethan really, he is honestly an amateur historian himself. He really dives in to this stuff with this, like, he wants to find the accurate image. He wants to find the whole story. So I cannot, like, there are not enough words to describe Ethan's work into finding the imagery for this stuff. And not only finding the imagery, wanting to know the story behind the images. So he wants to know what is going on in this image, who's in this image, when exactly did it happen during the D-Day timeline. So everything you're seeing is double, triple checked as far as, what happened. And so, yeah, it's.
Well, and I think I remember him mentioning before, it's even down to the color correction when you're adding color to these black and white photos to bring them to life, and you're maybe using some of the AI technologies, making sure that the color is still accurate for the time period. So, I mean, he's really getting into the nitty gritty with the accuracy, which is so important in what we do.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think we can do, I mean, just the sound as well. I mean, everything was so just this dynamic, moving piece, and you're out there on the plaza, and just that immersiveness with just the sound, you feel like you're there in parts. I mean, the attention to detail with things like that is incredible. And I know there was a lot of time spent just in that piece as well of, not only what you're seeing, but what you're hearing as part of that experience. And that could be
how many speakers around the plaza?
We set up 13 loudspeakers around the plaza, sort of in a circle, so that anywhere in the audience you'll hear everything. But also we can do some kind of special effects, like the buzz bomb flying by.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It kind of sounds like it's moving through the audience.
So yeah, almost we set up a surround sound plus, honestly, at the site of which Tanner could talk about at length, because that's his, he has all of that in his brain.
Yeah.
As far as the technical aspects
I
of
recall
that.
we were testing everything. We were a little concerned that our neighbors would think, are we being invaded? Like, what is happening? For a couple of days, we're just up there doing everything, and they're probably thinking, what is going on?
It was definitely loud enough to meet the need of the project, and that could. Did you get any complaints from?
No, we didn't. But I was a little.
People could hear it from downtown, though. You could hear it in downtown.
Downtown, you're like, did I just hear a bomb? Like,
You probably did. You probably felt it.
I think we had warned our emergency folks,
did.
like, hey, here's what we've got going.
Might be loud.
I think auditorily, we were also striving for accuracy and fidelity, but also it's important to tell the story. The number one being you need to hear the narration very clearly. So that was the most important thing. We want to hear the stories. The second thing was the sound effects, and a lot of those were sourced from libraries. I think the BBC has some great recordings that we used, and those were implemented around the loudspeaker array. So again, there could be machine gun fire happening behind you and all around you. So it creates a sense of auditory immersion.
And that was one of those things, sorry to interrupt, about accuracy also, because there are lots of sound libraries of like machine gun sounds and firearms and tank sounds and things like that, and airplane sounds and buzz bomb sounds, but making sure that they were the actual sounds, because they're different, right? Like finding the firearm sounds from those specific firearms. We were able to find like M60 tank recordings, like the engines and things like that. So just making sure, and that Carter, who did the sound effects and the composition, amazing, but he's very young and
an undergraduate.
He was an undergraduate at the time.
Amazing.
He's since graduated, but like, so we had to like, be like, hey, we got to make sure this is really accurate, and because it matters to the people who hear it. If there are people who were there, they can hear the difference.
Yeah. And then the other magic that Carter was capable of was the composition, the musical score, which truly amplified the emotional setting of each vignette. And he's a very impressive young man. He was able to compose this about 25-minute work on a very short time frame while being a senior.
Truly incredible.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah, he really worked closely with Ethan to understand, visually what's happening, emotionally, what are we trying to convey, musically, here it is. And I think that with the sound design and sound effects really creates this sort of immersive experience. You have this incredible visual experience right in front of you, but the sound all around you is what puts you into that world and keeps you in that world for the whole time. So it was George Lucas said, sound is 50% of the movie. I think that was also our thinking, making sure that this immersive audio was very present and strong, especially in the kind of the middle of the piece. You do feel like you're there, which it's can be quite overwhelming, and that's what we were going for that time.
What was it like to get on site for the first time and test it, to have this run through? So was it just how many people were there? Were you nervous? John, April, all of you, were you a part of it? I mean, how did that work?
No, it was fine. Everything's fine.
I had no doubts whatsoever. I knew everything.
You guys are like, how the hell are they going to do this?
Yeah, I think we truly spent months planning things and having some experience pulling off large format events like this before. Yeah, we felt confident, but of course, I mean, I was nervous about doing everything. It was a pretty tight time frame to do this on such a large scale. I mean, you could seat 2,000 audience or so that it's a big audience, it's a big venue, and we had help from a local production company, Midway, to deploy these technology systems, and we worked with them for months leading up to it, to plan it, to measure things. We met on site to make sure that the projection would work the way we expected. There'd be enough power for these huge projectors we're bringing in and all the loudspeakers that we're bringing in. And then we were doing some testing, and maybe we can come back to this part about the sort of preparation work, because that's an amazing story in and of itself. Some of the things David was doing. But yeah, I was super excited and nervous to do this, and we had just a few days to pull it off. Who was on site from our team? We brought so David and I
to the actual presentation.
To the actual presentation, David and I and Ethan and Carter, and then Gustavo Eroz, who's with ICAT as well. That was it from us. Of course, we had more help back at Virginia Tech to really make this happen. But with the production team from Midway,
huge production,
yeah,
like a dozen people probably
at least, and
for all the hardware required for the sound and video.
Yeah, are we kind of answering the question? Do we want to get into the
specs? I think you're talking about like when we first got to the site when we were starting the project. Is that the question, Dr. J?
Yeah. So what's it like? You get on site, and you're working with the D-Day Memorial folks. You're amping this thing up. Presumably, you're testing it before.
Yeah, we did. What
was that like?
So I think it was. I don't know if it was our very first visit or right after one of our first brainstorming sessions, and we're like, okay, we got to come back. Because we walked around the site and like, oh wow, this is way bigger than it like seems when you look at it. When you look at it on Google Maps or whatever.
What have we gotten ourselves into?
Yeah, and
very three-dimensional.
Challenging in multiple ways. Like, so it's challenging at the scale of it. It's challenging. The materials are challenging in two ways, which is that there's varied materials. So when you project light on them, it's going to look different. The shape of the site is challenging. The materials are also challenging because of the sound, and the shape of the site is circular. So it provides some very interesting reverberation that can happen. And
we have a lot of wind.
Frogs at night.
Wind. Luckily, when you fill it up with a lot of humans, which are essentially just water bags, right? It absorbs a lot of the sort of reflections of the sound, which is really good. But we did some initial projection testing. We brought a big projector that was like a third of the power of the projector of the 4 projectors that we were going to be using. And we did some projection testing and said, okay, this is going to work great. We put it, 1/3 as far away as the other projectors are, and the inverse square law says that should be a pretty good animal for what it's going to look like. We also, I can get into this now if we want, did a drone photogrammetry of the site, because we knew we weren't going to be able to do all our work at the memorial, right? We're down in Blacksburg. So we need to be able to work completely remotely and digitally. So we used a drone to take hundreds, if not thousands, of photos of the site from the air, and then reconstructed a 3D model, a digital 3D model of the site from those photos, and then cleaned it up and made it accurate dimensionally and with all the features. So we had a grad student, Marshall Polania, one of our grad students at the time, did all that 3D reconstruction work so that we could do all the pre-visualization work remotely and design the visuals to go on the site. And then we actually 3D printed a model of the memorial that we used to do all of our small scale projection testing. And that model is actually now at the memorial site where you can actually watch when we went in on it because we don't need it anymore. We did all our projection testing with it.
I was going to mention that you can watch it any day in our education Quonset hut on the little model, but it's it's a very pale imitation of the real thing and the scale that was involved. And I say it's amazing to see some of the detail that you might miss the first time you watch. Like I know reading a account of a paratrooper, and he talked about the green light came on, meaning it's time to jump. And unless you're paying attention, you might miss there's a green light that comes right at the top of the arch. And these little details that really floored me the first 3 times I saw it. So.
And exactly. And that's one of Ethan's, like, his attention to detail with that is amazing. And when we were designing the projections for this, it was pretty clear very early on that the memorial itself kind of didn't provide enough surface to give to really show all the visuals that we wanted to in the proper way. So we designed a set of projection screens that would be installed on the site for the event that actually mimic the invasion stripes that are at the top of the arch. So there's 5 projection screens that are installed across that give us more surface area, but they just kind of seamlessly felt like part of the site once they were there and at night and once there was light on them. And it worked out really well.
And it's interesting because those screens in no way take away from the arch and the bunkers and the actual, structure of the monument, because there are definitely moments where front and center, it's the showcase and as it should be. But as getting back to the original conversation with April, it's a big hole in the middle of it.
It's like a donut. What?
So definitely
took some creativity.
It took some creativity. But you guys did it.
And thank you all for letting us. I mean, I know it's a reverend site, right? And we had to approach and say, what do you think about putting projection screen inside the arch?
That's right.
Yeah. Is it attached to it? No, it's just going to be sitting there. Like, okay.
Well, and that was
what does it look like?
Challenge as well, because we had our 80th anniversary ceremony that morning. So we're throwing things up, throwing things down, moving. So it wasn't you just come in and you set it and you're done. The screens were coming down. The scaffolding stayed up, but the screens came down. And so that probably was a little challenging.
The folks at Midway were super happy that we made them.
Wanted to remind everybody, so we'll be showing this again June 5th and 6th of this year, right?
Yes. June 5th and 6th. With a new prelude for American Studio.
And we encourage people to go online and get your tickets, because we did sell out the at least one of the nights that we did before, and I think we had to scale back the second night because we encourage you to do that. And I just want to say too that I knew we had everyone that we had really moved people when at the end of it there was just silence and the whole audience with over 1,500 or more people there. It was, you could hear a pin drop, and I think it struck people on that very emotional level of the sacrifices that were made. And so again, just you guys did the whole team, you all did an amazing job in bringing it all together. It was superb. Can't wait to show it again.
And I don't want to give away too much about the America's 250th prelude, but we've seen the sneak peek. It is incredible. I do not want to give away the theme, but it's amazing. People are going to love it.
Nice addition.
Yeah. If you saw this in 2024, you want to see it again, because the intro is different, but also there's so many little details that you can pick up on repeated watching. If you didn't see it in 2024, you need to. It's just it's beyond easy description. Even watching it on the tabletop model we have now, just pales in comparison. But it is just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, we're actually really excited to see it large again too, right? I mean, even though we've looked at it a million times, we've only seen it up on the memorial like 3 or 4 times,
Sure.
including the testing that we did. Right.
Right.
So we've seen it just as many times in person as everybody else has. So we're really looking forward to seeing it big again also.
Well, and I'd also encourage our listeners, just go on Google, look up Virginia Tech ICAT, ICAT, and you'll see all of their other works are available. Just some really, really incredible stuff that's
phenomenal,
worth a watch. There's one in particular with Lane Hall, the Corps of Cadets, or Friends of the Corps of Cadets, and it's amazing. And that's how I think we knew that you guys would handle this with the sensitivity and the approach that needed to be handled, because we saw what you did with that. So, yep. Go check them out.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a huge part of it. So our guests have been David Franisich and Tanner Upthegrove from ICAT, from Virginia Tech, part of the amazing creative team behind the film When We Went In, the D-Day Experience in Light and Sound, which you absolutely have to see again this year. You guys, of course, but also everybody else listening to us, make it a priority on June 5th and 6th to come to the memorial to see that and more, of course, and to be part of the festivities. We really appreciate the attention to detail that you guys had with this, and your devotion to history and to doing this the right way. And of course, we appreciate your time today. It's been really fascinating to hear about this. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, been a real pleasure. Well, thanks everybody else for joining us. So you can email our team at podcast@dday.org. Again, that's podcast@dday.org. We'd love to hear from you. If you're enjoying our discussions on World War II and its lasting impact, please subscribe to this podcast, share it with your friends, rate it, leave us a review. Help us share the lessons and legacies of D-Day and World War II. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Take care.
Someone Talked is a production of the National D-Day Memorial Foundation, recorded at Media Squatch in Bedford, Virginia. The views expressed are not necessarily those of the foundation, studio, or sponsors. Promotional consideration for Someone Talked is provided by Framatome, an international leader in nuclear energy. Learn more at framatome.com. Explore the National D-Day Memorial, plan your visit, and learn more about our educational programming and upcoming events at dday.org. Join the conversation. Email our team at podcast@dday.org. So long from all of us at Someone Talked.